Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Faiā Futures show. So wherever you are coming in through, thank you and welcome. Today I'm really excited. I'm going to be introducing with us shortly our guest for today, Sabina Beleuz. But let me tell you a little bit about her before we dive in. So Sabina is the co-founder of Coinocracy and researcher at Stanford Law in the crypto legal space, seeking to bridge the gap between TradeFi and DeFi and help communities financialize. So she started off her career in venture capital in Silicon Valley, doing deal scouting as well as supporting founders through leading Stanford's largest organization. And she's always thought she'd become a venture lawyer, but upon entering law school, discovered the wonderful world of Web3. She now leads one of the first blockchain law journals of its kind and became involved with decentralized autonomous organizations, as we call DAOs, to assist in governance. So she's going to share more about that with us today. So for those who are just tuning in to Faiā Futures for the first time, we talk about the future of work and communities associated with Web 3.0 and the metaverse. So I hope everybody can hear me because now I'm going to start introducing our guest speaker for today, Sabina Beleuz. Come join us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eliza. It's great to finally get the chance to talk after all this time. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. Yeah.
Thanks, Sabina. Thanks for joining in. So she's calling in from, where are you calling in from, Sabina?
I'm from Toronto right now. It's my hometown. You always have to take a step back and visit family whenever you can. So that's what I'm doing right now. But usually I'm based in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley.
Awesome. I hope you are keeping toasty warm over there. And just for context, I'm tuning in from Mexico. So warm and cold climates here showing you today. Okay.
Definitely envious. Yeah.
Okay, so Sabina, let's dive in. So I've shared a short intro of you and your bio, but how did you kind of get into this space? Share a bit with us your career history, I suppose, to get people understanding how it may impact them too.
Okay, yeah, sounds great. Yeah, so I'm Sabina. I started off my career back in college. I really was so interested in supporting founders in any way I could. I was leading Stanford's largest entrepreneurship organization. It was called BASES. And through that, I got to meet a ton of local founders on campus. And I was so excited about what they were building. And I said, I'd love to get more involved in whatever space I could help founders in. And so initially in my mind, that was either venture capital or venture law. So you like helping really fund these startups and enable the funding, legally speaking. I got involved with a few venture capital firms, mostly in the fintech space around Series B, maybe Series late A stage. And I loved it. I loved the experience of having the opportunity to network with so many different entrepreneurs on campus and really support what they were doing, always connecting people. After that, I went to law school and I loved it. But I was constantly thinking about this new world of crypto, especially how I heard a lot of my friends were talking about how decentralized autonomous organizations were really leveling the playing field for entrepreneurs in the sense that they could seek funding from a broader group of people, not just venture capitalists with big ticket entries into, very particular narrow rounds. So I got very excited about that. I ended up joining and eventually becoming the managing editor of the Journal for Blockchain Law and Policy at Stanford. It was the first crypto journal of its kind. And I think before that, crypto wasn't really looked at, legally speaking, as something that was an academic area of research. So I joined that, learned a lot more about the space, and eventually got involved in a lot of decentralized autonomous organizations. Now, starting from the ground up, essentially a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, usually takes place right now on Discord. It's a group of people fully decentralized working together to achieve some goal. Some of these are token gated, so you need to hold a certain amount of token, or NFT gated, you need to hold an NFT to be able to join. But really the ultimate goal is each person takes on a responsibility within the DAO and contributes to it. So very much changing the nature of work as we see it. So I joined a lot of these DAOs, and I had people constantly come up to me asking, you know, how do we really enable financialization of our community? We have this community of like, let's say hundreds, thousands of people, and we have a lot of founders coming out from it. Usually these founders would invent something maybe for the DAO, like they were trying to create tooling for it. For instance, maybe they were trying to figure out tools to manage governance or manage like rewards and incentives once you do contribute to the DAO. But these DAOs couldn't figure out a way to actually invest back into these founders in a way that was legally compliant. And so that's kind of how the vision of Coinocracy, the startup I'm working on right now, came to be. We should aim to let these communities financialize in a way that really supports founders directly. Since then, for the past year, I've been working on Coinocracy. It's been a lovely experience and happy to share more on that front.
Thanks, Sabina. Yes, we'll definitely be diving into some more about Coinocracy. I want to reel back and just some of the points that you shared about your experience. Now, law and crypto, you know, there's a lot of people like still finding their way how they can get involved in this space. How did you, so you went through this entrepreneurship route, you did
Yes.
law. Now, like, how did those two come together?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the interest came about because the world of crypto law was so new and so fresh. It was essentially like the Wild West, especially a few years ago. Because even now, today, for instance, people aren't 100% sure whether owning crypto assets are securities or not in the US. There's a lot of questions about whether a DAO should be incorporated or not, and if it is, where. So I think the exciting part about all of this is that it's completely new territory for lawyers, and essentially anybody is welcome in the legal research game for this realm. People are very open. I think a lot of legal research can be very inaccessible to people, especially young new lawyers or researchers trying to enter the space. But because there aren't many voices here that are really aiming to help the Web3 community, I think it's a lot more available for new researchers.
So would you say, I can hear curiosity as something that sparked you. Now, for a lot of people who think are just going down the traditional route or already in the traditional route for like the amount of years that we've been accustomed to, what could you say about exploring this new territory? Because obviously with Web3 being in its infancy, we'll need a lot of restructuring. So how can individuals, whether they're researchers, lawyers, or other examples of other territories you think can refocus or shift their attention to this new emerging space?
Yeah, I think on my end, what helped the most was really just getting myself immersed in the Web3 communities that were driving these conversations forward. And to me, that's the world of DAOs or decentralized autonomous organizations. So I think the best way would be really to, first of all, join Twitter, because apparently everything on crypto is on Twitter, which I did not know before. And then really get embedded in all the DAOs that you see that you find interesting. And there are DAOs specialized for like a ton of different things. There's affinity group DAOs. There's some specifically focused on things like DeFi or NFTs, for instance. And there's some actually focused on law. So for instance, there's one called LexDAO and LexPunk. And those are ones where there's crypto lawyers involved and crypto researchers constantly just talking about, you know, which jurisdictions to go look into and things like that. So I'd say those are the best places to get involved. Those conversations all take place over Discord, an application, and you can join essentially these groups. For the most part, they're very open, or at least they have open arms where you can learn and ask people questions. And that's another thing. I think reaching out to people in this space is so easy because everybody's willing to help and onboard new people. And I just saw there was a question about what areas to look into for beginners on Discord. I think there's some really like yeah, thank you so much. There are some really famous DAOs. I would say if you just look up like DAOs and then whatever area you're interested in, you can just start there. There's a really wonderful new group popping up called Surge, which is where Eliza and us met. That is focused on like really onboarding women and women allies essentially into crypto, because I think it's definitely an issue. So love the DAOs and really helping as much as possible.
Yes, a shout out to Surge, the Discord group that Sabine and I met on, an amazing Discord space for women in this new emergence of Web3 in the metaverse. So yes, on that, I would also, recommend Twitter. Like, I also have to admit, I was like a Twitter newbie. And I'm like, how does this work? But really,
Exactly.
yeah, you're right. It's really easy to be able to jump online and just research. And there's an amount of information there. The rabbit hole, sometimes we fall into that rabbit hole. I'm sure, Sabina, you
Yep.
fall into the Twitter rabbit hole sometimes.
Always. It's
Yeah.
important.
Yes, but there's a lot to learn from. And one thing I do get asked by participants or the people that meet with me is like, oh, there's so much information. They feel too late or they feel overwhelmed. What I can also share is like the space is so young. Don't feel like you're, running behind because there's only a small amount of us in this space, right, Sabina?
For sure. And I think people are just so open and willing to engage. Actually, the nature of DAOs, just to be very clear about this, is that people don't tell you what to do, and I think this is very different than like a traditional role in a corporation. It's completely decentralized. So you find your footing within that Discord group, within that DAO, and then you realize, hey, maybe this page isn't translated into French, and there's a lot of French speakers, so maybe I'll go ahead, make a proposal in there, and do it. It's about taking initiative by yourself to find ways to advance the DAO's vision and help it grow. So I think that's pretty amazing.
On DAOs, I want to break it up for us, for our audience, because I'm not too sure if everybody is exactly familiar with it. What I find is on the Twitter arena, there's like a lot of beginners and also people who are like, they know it and they're in it. But let's break up decentralized autonomous organization. Like all these three individual words. Decentralized. Okay. In this arena, what does decentralized mean?
Yeah, I think it means a lot of different things depending which DAO you look at. But for the most part, I think it means that there's no hierarchy of power, one person top down telling others what to do. Instead, it's each person autonomously taking on a role within the organization and contributing wherever possible. I think there's issues that come with that, of course. It's hard to coordinate when you have hundreds, maybe thousands of people just jamming out on their own. But I think people really appreciate the ability to have some sense of ownership on their own without it being completely top down. So yeah, autonomous, I think it comes from a lot of the times DAOs have smart contracts embedded into them. So essentially what that means is there's a program that underlies the decisions that the DAO makes. So for instance, if we all came together, let's say Eliza and I were in a DAO and there were maybe 100 other people, and we voted on, let's say, investing in a company or onboarding new members, the smart contracts underlying that would help enable that and make sure it happens using programming. So I think that's also amazing because it ensures like accountability and transparency. You can see everything that's happening on chain. And it also means that I don't have to rely on Eliza to press that button when the time comes. The smart contracts will do it. Not that I don't trust you to do it, Eliza, but it helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like all these under the governance structure, I believe is we're going to see a lot of changes in the future of how we're going to interact with each other, how even the simplest ways of delegating roles, projects,
Yes, exactly.
work, huge. So on that, so what are the future trends or the things that you're seeing or that you've been you're really in the space, you're creating coinocracy and everything. What are these trends that you're seeing? But specifically, I guess you could start off with these key questions that people are asking. Share more about that.
Sure. Okay. So I'm coming at it from an angle where I'm really excited about the ability for communities to invest back in themselves, like I mentioned before. I think that this sort of evergreen growth through investing and really leveraging treasury assets is the future. So what I mean by that is like, let's say you are a DAO and you have a treasury, which is like where all the DAO's assets are stored. That treasury could be used for maybe funding members or rewarding them when they do great things. Maybe it's for hiring full time if that's what your DAO wants to do. Maybe it's for legal costs, things like that. But also, I think that we can leverage those treasury assets and create more assets by taking them outside your own DAO, by supporting other ecosystems, other players, maybe founders from your own DAOs creating startups. That's what I'm really excited about. And we're starting to see a lot of different trends in that space, a ton of investment DAOs popping up, or even big DAOs that have investment arms. I think that's definitely the future. And there's some instances of like things like Olympus DAO that are just exclusively focused on helping people leverage treasury assets. So I hope that helps a little bit, but that's really what Coinocracy is building. We're helping DAOs and communities really financialize by building out venture capital arms for them.
So can you explain what is a treasury asset to you and how it could also maybe be many different things in the next years to come?
Sure. Okay. So a treasury asset to me, I don't own a DAO, but if or like lead a DAO in any way. But I am part of a few DAOs, right? And some of them have, let's say, assets in their own token, if they have a token. Because people buy into the DAO and they contribute to it, all those assets get pulled together into this treasury. Like I said before, they're usually used for overhead or hiring costs, things like that. I think that's really changing the future of work and how this all works, but happy to share more on that later. But the point of all of this is like, for the most part right now, a lot of these big treasury assets are locked in that DAO's own token. So if we have like the ELIZA coin, all right, all these assets are locked because they're only in the ELIZA coin. And if it goes up, that's fantastic. But if it goes down, we don't have a diversified portfolio. There's nothing for us to fall back on and say, hey, I invested in this and that and that. So we're safe and we really are spread across the ecosystem. No, it really puts us at risk. So I think that's what we need to focus on, is helping DAOs leverage their treasuries, helping big protocols leverage their treasuries too. There's a lot of great articles on this.
I couldn't agree more with you on that, because right now it's like traditionally we have silos, right?
Yes.
And we're trying to want to break through that silos in everyday life. And with these DAOs, what we at Faiā, we believe we want to coin the term like meta communities, communities within communities. Mm-hmm. And with the metaverse and Web3, this interchangeability for individuals to be able to hop between different communities, or we can call them, in this case, DAOs. So with that, a exclusive tokenized system may not be able to work right now, but in the future, when people can move and take their data wherever they go, now that's the power we see, that I see anyways, of Web3 and the metaverse happening. Very, very interesting. Definitely protocols and new systems to be put in place, and we look forward to seeing that. I think we have a question. Okay, Vasu, with respect to DAOs, there's been a trend of sub-DAOs because of the practical constraints of absolute decentralizations. Any thoughts on how that might develop?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I have thoughts on the general issue of like coordinating in a fully decentralized world in general. We're starting to see, so just to take a step back, we're starting to see these sub-DAOs appear because let's say you and I are trying to organize one large DAO that is focused on empowering a student community, for instance, right? And within that, we're like, okay, we think we should start a legal guild or an investment arm, right? In order to have all those people coordinate within that sub guild, it also takes decision making on a different level, on that sub level. And so some sub DAOs are being created. I think the tricky part of that is that when you get to extra layers of consensus based decision making, things take a long time to coordinate still. I think there's some very great tweets, and I'm happy to share more, but I don't think DAOs have to be fully coordination free or leaderless to be DAOs, to be decentralized or autonomous. I think you can have community appointed leaders and organizers. To me, that's kind of akin to the DAO within a DAO thing, because ultimately there's going to be someone that's organizing that sub DAO at the end of the day. I think the point is, what we really need to focus on is like, how do we structure these DAOs so these decisions can be made including as many people as possible and many individuals, while still being speedy. That's tricky. Everybody right now, for the most part, in the DAO world isn't in it full time. We haven't reached that apex point where people are contributing exclusively to DAOs as a full-time job. There are some exceptions, and maybe I think that might be the future of work. But right now, we're not there yet. So I think we need to figure out, how do we leverage individuals' time so that they can contribute most efficiently, and so they know where to go to contribute and where to onboard new members. That means we need a coordination ecosystem, and that means we need really, really good onboarding onto DAOs. And some players have mastered this and others haven't. To me, that's where the focus should be, as opposed to building DAOs within DAOs within DAOs. But yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Vasu, for that question. And that's why, I mean, for us, it's so important that it's going to be so community focused.
Yeah.
I see that onboarding and retention and engagement in that community or in that DAO is gonna mobilize people and get people to stay, right?
Yes.
As well as, I mean, these sub DAOs, I believe, are happening because I think people are experimenting and trying things out, and I think that's great. Experiment. I think the space is so young, and I just think that there's a lot of gray. I'm going to be saying this a lot in my show.
Yeah,
Everything
sure.
is really gray at the moment, and we don't know what it's really going to look like. I believe that the structure and hierarchy is also still going to be there in some way for decision making to occur, for different what do we call it? For granting different permissions for different individuals. And on that, so Sabina, you mentioned like future of work, and this is maybe the future of work. What skills or what kind of people do we need to start kind of looking out for, or start upskilling ourselves on, or educating ourselves on in this space? Or maybe even for you, your experience of the kind of people that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think a big thing that's missing from this world are, well, it's two-pronged. First is community organizers, really individuals, as I mentioned before, that can help with this onboarding, that can help point people in the right direction. I'm not talking about establishing a hierarchy and giving people managers in this world. I'm talking about, showing people, hey, these are the needs that exist in our DAO ecosystem, and this is where you could play a role if you wanted to, and if not, this is where you could play a role. That's really important. And I think for the most part, operations roles have been kind of missing from the space. And I think that's because people have misconstrued the word DAO, or the decentralization element of it, to mean fully leaderless. I think that is a big mistake, because it leads to a lot of inefficiency in decision making. And I've experienced it firsthand. I think the second element of it is community education. What I mean by that is, beyond just saying, okay, like, come into our DAO, we need to teach people within those DAOs, what do all of these terms mean? There's a lot of new people in Web3 and crypto. I think it's not an accessible world yet. And I think in order for it to be an accessible world and for it to grow sustainably, we need individuals that are willing to spend time educating others about what all of these things mean. I mean, even I'm learning every day. And I think I'm benefiting a lot from people being so open. But at the end of the day, if we don't have people really working on this full time to educate others, I think we're going to miss a huge portion of the community. And it's a very dangerous thing to build an exclusive world like that.
Completely agree with you. Hence the show.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
We're gonna, I just noticed the time. We can keep talking, but I'd love for you to share a bit about Coinocracy with us.
Sure. Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we're really focused on building DAO VC firms. VC meaning venture capital, so investment firms essentially, allowing anybody and everybody who's qualified to pool together their money and then invest it in the communities they believe in. So for instance, if I was in a DAO and I saw a lot of founders coming out, maybe they started building out tooling for the DAO, and that later spun out into something much bigger. Now, I could let them go to traditional finance people and go ask all the big ticket VC firms, hey, will you give us money? Please give us some assets. Or I could, as a community member that fully understands where they came from and that wants to see them grow, actually give some of my treasury assets to them and get the proceeds in return. So it's a two-pronged thing. On one hand, you have these DAOs and communities that don't understand how to financialize. And on the other, you have these founders that really are looking for money, and also beyond money, like actual support. and deep Web3 crypto native knowledge that people in traditional finance might not have. So that's essentially a little bit of our vision and what we're building. We'd love to connect the world of traditional finance to decentralized finance, TradFi to DeFi.
Love it. Really excited for you. And I've been watching seeing the articles. So excited. How can we all stay connected or join? Are you looking for anybody?
Yeah, that sounds great. I love to always share more about Coinocracy, so feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm Sabina_Beleuz on Twitter. Also, the Coinocracy on Twitter is for Coinocracy. We're going to be sharing more and more on there as we continue building. Our landing page is at coinocracy.finance. You can find it in my name tag, I think, here. And essentially, it involves an email waitlist that you can join where we share our growth, our fundraising round, and more. We're constantly looking for more help on this front, especially if you're a go-to-market professional, because again, we're so focused on really accessing all markets, ensuring that as much as possible, all communities can financialize in a really inclusive way. I think there's been a big mistake in the world of Web3 and DAOs by suggesting that accessibility is a virtue of decentralization. I think that's not the case, and we have to actively put efforts in reaching the communities that we want to reach, especially those that are marginalized or underrepresented in crypto right now, which is a lot. If you go to a DeFi conference, you'll see that. So, yeah.
I'm with you on that. I'm all about getting this space to be as easily as accessible as possible. Thank you so much, Sabina, for sharing that. I will also be sharing that in our tweets and once I get offline on LinkedIn on Sabina's details, so you can connect with her and the Coinocracy. But before we close off, just for those who are new or you haven't seen yet, at Faiā, we are having our first cohort of our Meta Community Micro Accelerator happening in January, so that we're going to be doing this for a 1-week sprint on starting the 10th of January. So for those of you who don't know much about Faiā, Faiā is an organization built to bridge communities and technology, focusing on blockchain adoption and the future of Web3 and the metaverse. So if you are a founder, an innovator who wants to upskill, maybe marketeers, strategists who wants to learn and actually build up an MVP of their community or whatever they want to create to prepare themselves for Web3 and the metaverse, or to upskill, this is an opportunity to join us for a 1-week sprint to get yourselves getting your hands dirty, putting something out there. So I'll also be sharing a little bit more about this on our socials. So stay tuned. And also we've got a special code for those who want to enroll with us. If you have any questions, jump onto those links, which I will share shortly. And to stay connected with us, please also join us on Twitter, or you want to connect with me on personally my LinkedIn. I'll share that with you, or Twitter at Oracle of Balance. Okay, so Sabina, thank you so much for being on. I will always love to ask my guests one last question though. Because we're diving into the online world and virtual world really in depth over these next 5 to 10 years, what do you suggest that we do as individuals, as people, as social beings, to stay grounded and connected?
Yeah, I think this is very particular to the crypto world. I find that when you enter into DAOs and Web3, you'll find this unbounded optimism, and it's very exciting. Okay, if you've ever heard of GM, which means good morning, or WAGME, we're all gonna make it. These are terms that are crypto slang that you'll learn as you're slowly being onboarded there. And that unbounded optimism is wonderful, right? You'll never, I mean, tell me one other industry that wishes you good morning every single day, and I'll be astonished, but I haven't experienced it yet. So I think first, that's great. Keep that in mind, keep that optimism and energy going. But also, I think it's fine to be a little bit critical and self-reflective, self-aware about what you're building and why you're building it. I think there's a lot of things being built right now that maybe aren't targeting all communities that they could, that maybe aren't being built with the idea of self-improvement in mind constantly. Not that I want to completely shift, the motto of Web3, but I think we can all be a little bit more self-aware and focused on improving the world and society a little bit more with crypto. So I hope that helps. It's very vague, but I think you'll find that it rings true as you start to enter this Web3 world.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sabina Beleuz. Once again, everybody, stay tuned in for more of what Coinocracy has to share, and for episode 3 next Monday. All right, catch you all soon and stay connected. We'll speak soon.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.